just to see who was in which exhibition together with what other artists, who was the curator at that time, and how were their relations. And there are certain artists that have huge networks, not even the most famous ones, but you can just click on artists and see whether or not they have big connections. The female artists have other connections than male artists, so this kind of big data research can be done with museum collection information if you just are willing to share this kind of data with researchers. So that was the kind of research we were doing after opening the Rijksmuseum. This is linked to open data. If you're interested in it, I will talk about it a lot more, but because of time I will skip it a bit. But we were also trying to see if we could use keywords that the Getty is using and other museums are using. First of all, to automatically translate our collection. Their keywords are translated to 7 different languages. We only use Dutch words. So if you link yourself to other ציבורי, you get free translation. So very cheap solution. And then I switched jobs, and this is what I'm currently doing. I'm researching, or we're building a digital infrastructure on the Second World War in the Netherlands. And we're interested in resources as a way to research what happened during the Second World War, where did it happen, who was involved, and when did it happen. So I changed jobs a year ago. I currently work for a Dutch infrastructure, so I'm totally sorry for the Dutch word. But for me it was a setback 10 years. We started harvesting, collecting open data from archives, museums in the Netherlands, small museums, and I was used to the very rich Rijksmuseum collection. And then we got, and I really love this image, but we would get, you know, very nice but low resolution images. Someone was very kind to describe a lot of things happening on this image and then attach one keyword, and this keyword just states the name of the city where this picture was taken. Wormerveer is a city in the Netherlands. So we bought this very sophisticated system to connect all beautiful keywords we were thinking of collecting, and we would only get Wormerveer, which is completely irrelevant for the story of this picture, because this picture is about 2 men that led the resistance during the war and helped the Americans liberate Wormerveer. And they also attacked the city hall, stole the administration. And the hilarious thing in this picture is that they caught the mayor that collaborated with the Germans, and they put him in a carpet. So this is a long, detailed story about these men and what they were doing for the resistance. Has nothing to do with Wormerveer. So how can we improve this data to really tell a story about the Second World War when the data that you get from your local archives or your local museums is either poorly annotated or annotated for a local system where it's more interesting to talk about the city of Wormerveer than it is to tell a national story. We tried crowdsourcing, and again, this is what we tried at the Rijksmuseum. This is Dutch, but this isn't. This is what happened when we got our audiences involved. Usually we really love them, but this time we really hated them. There's some spam up there, and there's insult, and there's nonsense, and so on. So when we started thinking about ways to get the crowd involved in annotating our collections, we first had to think about how do we get them involved and not get all this nonsense? How do we get relevant information from the audiences? Well, we found 2 ways. The first one is to exclude audiences and get computers involved. This is the machine we're currently using to annotate collections. A company in the Netherlands was really nice. It's all algorithms, extracting strings, matching strings, and so on, but it's made available in a very easy way, so you don't need to have huge programming skills to build your own search engine. This is actually a search engine. And And the nice thing is that we can match thesauri and resources on specific fields. We can weigh the output of the matching, and we can then send it back through the website as new and enriched data. And I'm sorry, again, it's Dutch, but instead of warmer veer, it now says fighting forces, collaboration, NSB, resistance fighters, and city hall information. So now we have relevant keywords attached to this description based on this description. And if we have other collections that also use these keywords, then we can really start connecting them. So then we can connect the images of the National Archives or of another local archive, or even, you know, other material, books or objects or whatever we can collect. So this is the thesaurus we're building. This is actually the thing that holds the keywords that connect all the collections. And we didn't just want to write a thesaurus as an instrument. A lot of museums have thesauri and it's just an internal instrument. For us, it's also an encyclopedia. So every keyword we put in the thesaurus, we also write scope notes for, and we use the scope notes and the images to explain the specific keywords to our audiences. So we're not just trying to use keywords as an external instrument to find the vases or to find specific images, but really to help people navigate through the subjects of the Second World War. And the cool thing about the thesaurus is, and I know you can't read Dutch, but as you can see, I enter a different word there than comes out here. We're using hidden labels and alternative labels to match the different ways people can describe an event with the name we use for the event. So we're really trying to think what the audience would think and then help them navigate through the collections. And this is the input, open data. This is a record from the National Library. Thank God, over the last couple of years, a lot of archives and libraries in the Netherlands started opening up their collections and implementing APIs. We wouldn't have been able to do this 5 or 6 years ago. We estimate that 600 institutions in the Netherlands have collections about the Second World War. We are currently harvesting 60 organizations, 60 collections of organizations in the Netherlands. So it's 10% of the organizations that we would like to have in our portal site. So I know there's still a lot of work to do, but I'm actually proud that this is the number we were able to get in year and a half. And we're also doing another project. This is the People's Portal that we're building. We estimate that 260,000 people in the Netherlands or from the Netherlands were killed during the Second World War. 100,000 and 102,000 Jews were deported and killed. 158,000 Dutch people in all kinds of war-related things. We collect as many archives or data that we can about everyone involved in the Second World War. Currently, we have 280,000 names in our portal, but a name is something different than a person. A name is just a name from one resource. What we're trying to do is find a range of resources about one person. And this person, for instance, is mentioned in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different resources. And we use these resources to recreate timelines for people. So when was he born? When did he die? Where did he die? Even what camp to what camp to what camp was a person transported during the Second World War. So this is what a detailed record of a person can look like. This is his entire history. This is what we know from resources. This is where we are still lacking information. And this again is his date of death. And this is also the route he took. And these are the resources we used to recreate this story of this man. And for us, this is one of the most beautiful projects we're doing, because you're trying to give everyone a face and a story and a timeline, and you're just trying to show the war from every perspective possible. And also, we're recreating all these different events and see who else was on this transport, or who else was in this camp, and so on. If everyone collaborates and, no. So machines can do a lot with reconstructing the lives of people, as long as you have data. And this is where either machine or man can fail on you. This is an API that isn't working, and then you're trying to contact an organization and no one's there, or no one knows about an API, and so on. So this is one of the biggest issues we have, is that there are techniques, but there's very little knowledge about these techniques in museums and archives and so on. Another one, I always show this picture, I find it hilarious, is that technique isn't without flaws. So this is Adolf Hitler, and this is Elvis Presley, and according to, I think this is Pinterest, this is the same person. I find it an hilarious image, but this happens constantly. So we're looking at visual search, but this happens a lot. I have another one from a web shop where they recommend a man to buy a skin-colored bra. I don't know why, it's a hilarious image, but these kinds of recommendation systems, a lot of them are still in their beta version, and when you deal with information like the Second World War, you have to be very careful in what techniques you're using and what recommendations you are giving to the audiences. But I also have a lot of good examples of machines and what machines can do for you. This is the upload of the Rijksmuseum paintings to Wikimedia Commons. There is or was an automatic upload tool for museums. I don't know if any of you have seen it or uses it. But you can automatically upload images to Wikimedia Commons, and then other people can use the images from your museum or library or archive as an illustration to an article. And so we uploaded our paintings. We forgot all about it until someone told me that there are statistics about the usage of your images on Wikipedia. And this is the Rijksmuseum. And I can't even pronounce this in English. It's like, okay. Well, we were shocked too. It's 771 million views of images of the Rijksmuseum since July 2013. I love the Rijksmuseum website, but these are not the Rijksmuseum website statistics. You can only achieve this on Wikipedia. And I don't think I have it, but there's another statistic, and it shows you what are your most popular items on Wikipedia. And that's amazing too, because it's completely different to what your popular items in your galleries are. So the Night Watch is the most important image of the Rijksmuseum, and everyone that goes to the Rijksmuseum goes to see the Night Watch. But on Wikipedia, there's a painting of a canoe on a ship. And it's supposed to be used for a film about a ship rebel. So it's a painting that is used as a book cover and a cover for a film in the 1950s that is the most popular one. It's not the highlight of the museum. And even all historical paintings that had large historical descriptions were very popular on Wikipedia too. So this could be a different perspective on your collection. And then I come back to crowdsourcing. I already said we were looking into crowdsourcing at the Rijksmuseum, but the first test, we got all the rubbish and the spam and the bad things from our audiences. So we stopped crowdsourcing, but just before I left, we wanted to see if we could find other ways to get the crowd involved with our collections. and give them a more controlled environment where they couldn't spam us, but you know, we would really have something they could use and we would get something out of. And then for some reason we got in touch with a bird watching community. And you know, curators at the Rijksmuseum know a lot about art, but they know little about birds. So for them, a bird is a bird, and they can, you know, they can differentiate a goose from a, I don't know, a sparrow, but that's it. So we selected, I think, 10,000 objects that just had a title, bird at a pond, bird, bird, bird. And the bird people went berserk. We had a Saturday afternoon, a hackathon, and it was even on national television. There were people coming with their bird watching clothes on, even with their with their goggles, and they had to walk through the museum and they could point out birds on paintings, and then they would sit at a computer. And we built this app that we called the Curator, and it was super simple. And that's the thing I learned about crowdsourcing. If you get people involved in annotating collections, is that your interface can really kill your project. So what we did was they would get an object and they would be able with a mouse to just draw a square, and then a field would pop up and they would be able to type the name of the bird, and we would use a bird thesaurus as an auto-suggest. So they would be able to click the bird that they were trying to describe, but they wouldn't be able to, you know, put complete rubbish into the thesaurus. And I think in one afternoon they found, I don't know, 5,000 or 6,000 birds, and I got spammed for weeks from people, you know, give me more birds, do you have things with birds, can I please annotate more birds? And this is what also happened. So and my new job, I wanted to take this experience and do something else. This is the original archive of Camp Vught. It was a concentration camp in the Netherlands, and Germans loved their recordings. So they have a huge archive of everyone coming in and going out of the camp. And it's both Jewish and resistance and criminal prisoners in this camp. And these cards, they were scanned a couple of years ago, but then we just had a huge set of images of these cards. That was it. So we built a system for people to annotate these cards, so just transcribe these camp cards. You could say that this part could be done by a computer, but most of the ink is really bad and there's a lot of scribbling on it, and we wanted everything annotated. So we tried this with this camp. It has 30,000 cards, and we figured it would take us 6 months for them to transcribe the cards. We also wanted 2 people to transcribe the same card to see, you know, if they would match. Actually, it took them 2 months. Everyone went crazy over these cards, and people, you know, started. We had a comments field here. People started Googling and doing research on the people they found on these records, and started sending us biographies and so on. So it was a huge success, and we can now use this original archive for our People's Portal as well, because this data was in an archive and no one has ever used it before. So currently we're looking at the police records of the city of Rotterdam, which has a huge arrest card data bank that we're going to digitize and transcribe. So we're doing a lot of, I think, cool stuff to make as much data online available as possible and tell as much stories as we can. But unfortunately, we're dealing with, I guess, the same problems that you're dealing with. And I always use this because these people look like lawyers to me. Because the biggest issue we've been dealing with is legal issues. It started at the Rijksmuseum with copyright. Everyone was afraid of the copyright laws. Sometimes copyright laws are just used to not do anything. A lot of times you just don't know whether or not you have to deal with copyright or not. Some artists are very keen on their copyright, and in the Netherlands, the artist representative organizations are very strict and really can haunt archives and museums and send huge bills. So that was one big issue, and still is one big issue. And currently, and I don't know what the situation is like here, but currently a big argument to not open data is privacy laws. The EU is threatening with huge fines when organizations leak or spill information that is privacy sensitive. And I think these laws were meant for high schools and banks to be careful with my private data. But the weird thing is that a lot of archives and museums are terrified of fines and laws and privacy, and now closing up their archives because of privacy laws. And I don't think the laws were meant to close up archives, but a lot of archives that were online about people in the Netherlands are taken off over the last year because of privacy. So for me, as a historian, this is a huge threat, because you can't do research if all archives are taken offline because of privacy laws. And this is what happens. I always show this picture. It says not available because of copyright. The problem is that we can show images from the 17th century. There's no copyright here. But you can't show images from the 20th, 21st century online because of copyright. So in the end, what will our